Go. So, what business stage are you really in? Most business owners think that they're further along than they really are, and that's why they stay stuck. So, if you don't know where you are, you don't know where you're going, and you don't know how to get out of that stage and move on to the next. So, today we're going to talk about that. Before we continue, make sure you subscribe to this channel and put your comments in the comment box and share this out to let others know that we're here and we're helping businesses to grow and to get unstuck. So, we are Nate and Simone. We talk all things marketing. Welcome. Hi, Nate.
Hello, hello. All right. So, yeah, what talking about something that's near and dear to my heart, the stages of small business growth. There was an article that was put out in 1982, I think it was, on Harvard Business Review, and it's called The Five Stages of Small Business Growth. The authors did some research and they found that while it's true, of course, that there are many differences between businesses, they started to see patterns when it came to the growth of those businesses and the things that the businesses needed to have in order to grow and get to that next stage. And that's what we're talking about here today. Um, we're focusing on what the business needs needs rather than what the business owner feels like doing for their business, right? So we're talking about like using data, things measurable stuff that actually helps us to figure out what we need. All right. So first off, why does this matter? Okay. Um, and it's important to understand that growth in a business is not just about having more revenue necessarily, but it's about solving the right problem at the right time. One of the key findings that the authors of that paper that I mentioned found was that there was a crisis point, some type of a crisis that occurred right when the business was at a critical juncture. And if it was able to move beyond this crisis successfully, then it was able to grow and get to that next level. If it did not, however, the other two choices were basically it stagnates or it dies. You know, so you either are successful, you grow, you stagnate, or you die at every critical juncture along the way. And so, if you want to continue along and be successful and grow the business, then it's important to understand where you're at and what needs to happen next in order for you to get there. That's why
It's
it's
like
important to
having
know.
a GPS,
Yeah,
you know? Yeah.
there is a danger of not knowing and of being misdiagnosed. I think a lot of problems that business owners have with marketers, especially, is they are misdiagnosed a lot of the time. Okay, the marketers are there to sell you the thing that they do. Okay, regardless of where you're at, really. If it's an email marketing firm, then they are absolutely certain, 100% sure that email is the thing for you in your business, or automation. If they're into building automation for businesses, then of course they're going to try to sell you that, whether or not you need it, in the business. You run the risk, however, in the case of automation, if you build that too early, then you could overbuild. You'd have just too much, and it's just it's not really going to get you anywhere. It could be burdensome that way. When actually what you need, are leads coming into the business and sales to get things rolling, get revenue coming in, right? You could add staff to your business um, without having systems in place, which leads to, scaling chaos potentially. Had a client of mine experience this, unfortunately, in his business. He wanted to step away from the business. He wanted to extract himself. He wanted to, get that founder freedom, right? And so he was trying to find the right people to hire in his business. And this is kitchen bath remodeling. And so it's a tough industry to be in generally. And you add on to that the fact that it's difficult to find good people to help, you know. Then you're in a recipe for a hard road, in other words, and that's where he found himself. He hired people he thought could take care of it based on their supposed qualifications and the things that they said that they could do. However, in practice, it turned out not to be the case, and so he found himself paying payroll and then also paying to correct the mistakes that these guys made along the way, and it's just that becomes a big problem that you don't want to get into.
Well,
Um,
that's an interesting thought. Was it because of the systems or was it because of bad hires?
well, yeah, good question. He was attempting to put the systems in place, and he felt that theoretically they had systems in place, but it turns out in practice, maybe not everybody was on the same page. And I do think that that was a contributing factor. Um, Not having properly thought through and documented the processes and set the expectations to get everybody on the same page. I think that is part of the problem. But you know, um, I do think also, given from what he said, that you know, it's hard. It's hard to find people in that industry who can do what they say they can do, right? Um, and the ones that can do it are getting paid well at businesses, So it's and
Huh.
the so the businesses in the industry understand that, and so they're going to pay those guys well if they know what they're doing, and they're going to try to keep them, right? And so yeah. If you're the type of business that has the money to throw at top talent, then you get to keep them, right? And you get to acquire them to begin with, and snatch them up before the little guys get there, right? So that's
It's interesting. It kind of makes me think like how does top talent become top talent unless they have that space to grow,
yeah.
to
One of the things we
actually
started, yeah, one of
learn
the things I started to
and practice.
look into and encourage them to look into was certification programs.
Hmm.
You know, are there any types of certifications for people in that industry? Who are the certifying bodies? Who's actually doing this? You start to look into it, and it's kind of like it's a self-certifying industry to a certain degree.
Mm.
And there's a lot of like industry, like trade groups that are doing certifications. And so if you're a member of that group, then perhaps you have first dibs on the talent coming through. I don't know how, I mean, it makes sense that it would be
Probably,
that way,
yeah,
but
yeah. But it just made me think about this grid that I saw, and it talked about it had people people at the top, and I think the systems on the side, and it was like bad systems with bad people, awful outcome. Bad system with good people, awful outcome.
hmm,
Good systems with bad people, or good system with good people, the best outcome. Good systems with
hmm,
bad people, you can still have
yeah,
a fairly decent outcome.
yeah,
So it starts with having a really smooth, tightened up, system in place. Um,
yeah,
yeah, you can actually swap out in a really good system. You can actually swap out a good person and put in a bad person, and you can still get pretty good outcomes with that.
yeah. I agree. I agree. Um, so going back to why knowing your stage matters, it, something to think about here. The business life cycle is not linear. you can go backwards. And this is the case with the client I mentioned earlier. What ends up happening is that he contracted, right? Started to decline,
Mm.
had to, people left. He is severely restricting the amount of services that he wants to offer. And again, other mitigating factors that occur in his personal life, that kind of thing, which I'm not going to go into. But it's kind of like this perfect storm of things all happened all at once this year for him. Um, and not the least of which is like the hit to the housing industry in general because of tariffs and that kind of stuff. Like there's a whole lots of things going on right now working against him. Um, but yeah, so he has gone backwards to a certain degree. Um, Still going, but he's actually, he had some debt with some projects that he had to fix. He's actually managed to get that taken care of now here recently, and we're back on track with doing some lead generation stuff, but looking at keeping costs to a minimum if possible, right? Um, and maximizing the leads that he's already paid for from his lead generation service he was paying for and all that kind of stuff. So we're going to look into how we can do that kind of thing. So yeah, that happens. Um, and you have the choice. Do you continue on? Do you just kind of start over from where you're at and, or do you call it quits and hang it up, Um, anyway, it's important to think about here. You're not necessarily behind in your business. You might just be misaligned. Okay, so let's look at the 5 different stages based on. I've kind of given these stages my own name, but they're loosely based on the article that I mentioned earlier. Number one,
Okay.
stage one, foundation. So you're doing everything yourself. You have unpredictable revenue. There's no clear market or offer, and your focus should be on clarity, getting clear on what it is that you actually do for people. Um, Specializing, maybe niching, like I do this thing for this type of person or business, whatever it may be. And then also establishing your first lead gen system, whatever that may look like. I think that's important. Um, this is where startups. This is where startups are, right? Foundation wise. Some startups, start with a lot more cash than others, depending
Yeah.
on what they've been able to raise, right? But
I found it interesting how some of these companies they start with cash, they know, or yeah, they start with an investment. They know what they're they have an idea of what they're offering and who they're offering it to, but they don't have a way of actually making a profit from it until for a while, until like the investors start complaining, I guess, and because money is just going in but nothing's coming back out of it. That was the case with PayPal and this other company I heard about. um, it's like, okay, yeah, you've got an offer, you've got this great software, you have you know who you're offering it to, but how are you making a profit? Because they're bringing on so many people by giving all these great incentives and not making any money from it, which I
yeah,
thought was very
well,
interesting.
I
So,
mean,
but
if
if
we're
you don't
looking,
have money to start with, that I think that forces you to think differently, think in a more
yeah,
profit generating manner than
yeah,
having a lot of money to start with.
there's something to be said for
Mm.
reinvesting your profits in the business, which is I think what Amazon was about for the first 25 years, basically,
Yeah,
until it actually turned a profit.
yeah.
It was
And
just a
it's
few years
funny.
ago.
Yeah. Because people think like, oh, they're not making a profit. How, nobody's making the money. Oh no, they're some of the money that they're bringing in, people are getting paid, but there's
Yeah,
nothing left at the bottom, right? And
yeah,
at the bottom, it's still red, even though the owner of the company is, bringing home $1 billion or whatever, or is
yeah,
they consider him worth $1 billion.
yeah.
Um,
And in that case, they're generating revenue, they're paying
mm,
people, but the amount that they're investing in buying up other companies very often was the case with
yeah,
Amazon.
yeah.
Um, but the investors
Having
saw
lots of
that.
lost leaders, you
Investors
know.
saw that and they're like, oh, yes, okay, we get it. They're in growth mode. They're
Mhm.
acquiring. They are buying the competition
Very
to reduce
aggressive growth.
competition,
Yeah,
you know.
yeah.
Um, and so, okay, yeah, we're going to keep giving them money
So they're
because
gonna
these
keep
guys
giving
are
them money.
they're going the right way. This is what we want to see. Um, and sure enough, it happened. They turned a profit and made a lot of people very happy, let's say. um,
A lot
okay,
of
so
shareholders happy. I can, yeah, those other
yeah,
companies that they
exactly.
put out of business, I'm sure
Right.
aren't.
Yeah, let's qualify that. Yeah.
Uh,
Um, okay. So after that foundation stage, you get things, churning, and if things are rolling, you've got leads coming in. Now you're hitting the stabilization phase. And so you have some consistency in revenue, but you're still reliant on the owner for the sales and delivery. So, one person, many hats situation. The focus in this case needs to be looking at building simple processes in the business, really focusing on getting your client fulfillment systems down and really dialing in the pricing that you have for your product or your service, because
yeah.
that is going to affect your revenue, obviously. You know,
And then having those, I think focusing on the client fulfillment systems is crucial to help you to get to move to the next stage, because then you're taking
yeah,
yourself out of the operations as much as possible.
yeah. Client retention is key for a number of different reasons, obviously. Revenue stabilization, reduction in customer acquisition cost, increasing the customer lifetime value overall, all of which are going to make your accountant very happy when he looks at the books, or your CFO, whoever that is, right?
Yeah.
Um, so those are the types of things you really want. And that leads into the next stage, which is growth readiness. So you've slogged it out, you've gotten through that foundation, you have built your stable, you got your legs under you, and now you are ready to grow.
Mm.
Um, so you have a good offer, you have solid client results that you can, show in your white papers, in your case studies, and that kind of stuff. You have great reviews coming in, but maybe the founder is still kind of the bottleneck here. It's still dependent on the founder for everything to run smoothly. Maybe they have their fingers in a lot of the pies that are going along in the business, right?
Yeah, and
Um,
like we talked about a couple weeks ago, we talked about the founder having to make all the decisions, even if the
yeah,
founder isn't the one that is doing the fulfillment and doing all of the operations and
yeah,
wearing all of the hats. You're still the bottleneck when it comes to decision making. Um,
yeah,
and
exactly.
everybody needs to come to you.
Yeah,
So if
and
you can kind of let go of that,
yeah,
you can
this is
really,
where the crisis point in this case is usually a crisis of control. So in order to move to the next level, um, the business owner, the founder, really needs to systematize their delivery. They need to offload the administration and start building a team. But that makes them hesitant, right? Because nobody can do it better than me. That's the
right.
mindset, unfortunately. A lot of people in this stage. But is it through research it's been shown if the business owner does not delegate, if they do not um, build that team and systematize, you plateau or you die. Those are your choices. That's it.
Mm.
And so this is where you really need to think things through. How do I want um, to move forward? Do I want to move forward? What is that going to look like for me? And assuming that you've taken the correct path and continue to grow, that takes you to the next stage, which is scale execution. So you have all of your ducks in a row, you have hired the team, and now we're getting into scaling mode. So um, your team may be in place, but perhaps your operations are still a little bit messy. Your visibility may drop in the market for one reason or another. And maybe visibility internally in the company drops because as you start to grow, maybe you start to silo somewhat and people kind of get disconnected. There's the threat of that, right? And then you also maybe have some margin pressure setting in as well. The focus in this case needs to be on leadership systems, SOPs, and generating leads at scale. But also, I think going along with that is that visibility, increasing the visibility internally as well, because you want to have that single source of truth in the business where everybody can kind of see all the information that needs to be seen and known in order for the business to function, right? I think we talked about this before, but allowing people to kind of hoard information relevant to their duties as a means of like job security is that just
That
leads
can
to
kill your business. Yeah,
toxicity.
it'll kill your business for
Um,
sure.
yeah,
So yeah, having those SOPs are crucial. Um, Now the problem of the margin pressure, um, lead having more leads sounds good because then you have more opportunities for clients. But then I'm wondering about what about having looking at the pricing structure as well,
mhm.
you know,
Yeah. Are they the right clients who are
the right clients, yeah.
are you increasing the volume of clients at the risk of shoestring margins
Mhm.
where you could be decreasing the total volume of clients and increasing margins? Getting paid the same amount or more with fewer clients. Is that something that you need to start thinking about?
And that
Um,
kind of reminds me a little bit about that. It's not Price's law. It's the Pareto principle, I think, the 80/20 rule.
yeah,
And a lot of companies do face this, is that your 80% of your revenue is actually being generated by 20%
yeah,
of your clients or customers. And so then if you want to grow exponentially, you want to scale, then maybe it behooves you to let go of the 80% of the lower clients and really hone in and focus in on that top 20% and bring in more clients like that rather than the lower 80%, or let
yeah.
go
So
of 80% of the items, the offers that are not driving that,
yeah,
that revenue.
yeah. Maybe fine tune those offers
Mhm.
for to fit the higher paying clients. Case in point here, I just heard about recently with NVIDIA, the world's most valuable company. Uh, 39% of their revenue it comes from two companies,
Oh.
two sources. Think about that.
Mm.
Uh, yeah. Now,
So it
there's
sounds like they need to
obvious,
hone in and figure out like who are these
yeah,
people? How do we get
right.
them? And how do we get more people like them?
Yeah, you need to
Because then
have,
you
you
also
do
don't
need to have
want,
more.
right. You also don't want 50% of your revenue coming from just two clients.
That's very risky. Yeah. Because what if they leave, or something
Yeah.
happens? You just
One of them leaves,
lost
that drops your
40% of your
revenue.
revenue? Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
significantly.
Yeah. That's not a good situation to be in either.
Mhm.
So happy balance, as with all things, right?
Yeah.
Um,
My favorite coach likes to say, he likes to say high value, also high volume.
yeah,
Yeah.
ideally. Yes, yes. Find that sweet spot. Okay, now, assuming that you've got all that figured out, okay, now we're getting into the elite territory, okay? This is legacy leverage. You kind of have two options here. You can think about it as if you are building a legacy, or you can think of it as you're optimizing for to keep going, right?
Yeah.
If you're looking to build that legacy, in other words, you want to sell the business or give it to, somebody like your son or daughter maybe, or something like that,
Mhm.
then you are definitely going to need to be extracted. The founder cannot be in the day-to-day operations. They need to have that team in place, and everything needs to be humming along and smooth like a well-oiled machine. Um, because the business is running on the infrastructure and metrics, like data is helping make those decisions. And the focus here is, again, like I said, optimization, getting all your systems and processes optimized, making sure that you have the pricing optimized, the volume of customers and the ideal customers, all that is optimized. You are building brand equity. Your logo is seen as, you know, synonymous with, the meaning of whatever it is you're selling. Like cook products or Kleenex. Like this is what we're talking about here.
Yeah.
You have succession in place. We just saw uh, Murdoch just finalized that for Fox, right? His son
Mhm.
is official now, um, and your business is potentially ready for sale in that case, or handing over to somebody else. So that's pretty much it. There's technically stage 6, which is that optimization, but it's kind of gets lumped into stage 5. So it's all good. We talked about it. So here, the next step, let's talk about how to go about assessing where you're at. So some questions to ask yourself: what breaks when I step away, or does
That's a
anything
very good
break?
question.
Yeah, yeah. If it all falls apart when you step away, okay, there's some problems there. You need to fix that ASAP. Where does my time go each week? Are you
Mm.
documenting your time? Do you know this? How much time you're
You're
spending on
spending
doing
all of
what?
your time on admin tasks that you can hire a
Yeah,
secretary for. Huh.
yeah. What decisions in the business still depend on me? Okay, make a list, write it down, keep track. As you go along, just do it for a whole month, just to see what kind of a
Yeah.
list you're generating, and then from that, how can I delegate this?
Oh, you
What would
can build like a whole frequently asked questions list. Like, what are the questions that people are asking me over and over?
Yeah,
They can't seem to do it unless I say go.
yep, yep. Think of all the frustrations that you could relieve just by handing those off and helping the people that work under you to make those decisions themselves. Enabling them to figure that out on their own, right? Here's a good one. What would happen if we doubled leads tomorrow? This is one thing I always say. Even if I was able to get you 1,000 leads, do you have any kind of a follow-up process that allows you to
Right.
kind of keep in touch with them? I
Exactly.
don't know
Do you
about
have the
you.
capacity to even try to sell all those
Yeah,
things? Right. Yeah.
I have other things I need to do. I can't think about following up with 1,000 people, and so can I automate that, for example, or can someone else
Yeah.
do that for me? So what would happen if you double bleeds? Um, listen. So you mentioned earlier about listen, like frequently asked questions. Listen for language and patterns in the people around you. I can't keep up, so that might be a problem with stabilization.
Mhm.
My team keeps coming to me for help, so that might still be a problem in the growth readiness stage, right?
Growth. Yeah.
Um, I don't trust my operations. That might be a scale execution problem, you know. Um, okay. Now, of course, you could always take the assessment that we have as well. The link is in the description, by the way, so feel free to do that. Okay. And let's see here. We kind of already talked about some real examples, I think, but I guess the um, the important thing to think about here is that if you skip stages and if you think that maybe you're in a different stage and you start planning and orchestrating around where you think you're at, um, without really having a firm grasp on where you're really at, then that could be an expensive situation, an expensive. So if you think, for example, that you are in growth readiness stage and you invest a ton of money into lead generation, but you don't have a process for following up with them, what happens? You've just spent a ton of money on a bunch of leads that are just kind of sitting there, right?
Right. And then their first impression of your business is that, oh, there's nothing going on. They don't follow up. They're a scam. They're,
Right.
um,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah. And unfortunately, this is where, again, businesses that are working with marketing companies fall into this trap because they're just the marketing companies or agencies are there to sell you the thing that they do without really, they're assuming that you already know where you're at and what you need. You know what I mean? And so I think a lot of times business owners don't really know for sure what they need. And so having thought this through, figure this out before you go and talk to agencies about what you think you need might be a good idea.
The
But if you have any,
diagnostic.
yeah, if you have any questions about that, by all means, get in touch. Be happy
Hmm.
to discuss. Okay, let's see here. So next, once you know your stage, focus on the bottleneck, not the shiny object. Okay. Um, use something like the V3 growth system that we offer to identify your growth ceiling. Um, is it in the visibility, viability, or value? And align your actions with the real constraints, what's really holding you back, and really go after that and fix that problem so that you can, can actually be productive, right? All right. So
Fantastic.
do a
So,
little wrap up here.
so to recap, we've learned that growth is stage specific. We don't want to be thinking that we're in a stage that we're not in. So we do need to do some self-diagnostics. So take that growth assessment so you know where you really are based on metrics, based and not based on emotion. Um, I watched this movie last night called Up by Pixar, and
Mm.
you know, uh, there were a lot of dogs in this movie, and they'd be talking to each other. These are talking dogs. They're talking to each other. They're having a conversation, and all of a sudden, squirrel over here. So we don't want to be
Yeah.
looking at shiny object syndrome either. So
Mm.
focus on the stage that you're in before you jump. You can't scale what you haven't stabilized. So we want to have put in place a stable system first before we scale. Make sure it works, and then we scale. And
I always
diagnose. Yeah, go ahead.
I always say thinking about like construction, you need to have a firm foundation before you hang pretty things on the wall. That's what.
Yes, absolutely. Don't hang the pretty things and the foundation falls apart. That's not good.
Yeah.
Um, and we want to diagnose before we prescribe. So if your marketing agency is saying, oh, you need a new website, oh, you need to automate everything, oh, you need to do this, that, or the other thing, well then, and they don't even know what's going on in your business, what stage you're in, anything like that, um, run far away. So make sure that you actually know where you are first before you make decisions and go to the next step. So take the assessment. We'll put the link in the description and let's get you growing properly in the right direction.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah,
um,
and if you're tired of doing it on your own, by all means, get in touch and we can help you think that through, obviously.
absolutely. So, um, thanks for watching. We'll be back in our next episode, which we're going to be talking about how do you go from tech expert to being a visionary CEO? So we'll see you next week. Put your biggest takeaways in the comments, and we'll see you next time. Bye.